Munich, a city celebrated in the open source world as having thrown off the shackles of Windows and embraced Linux as their main operating system in city government offices as well as the Department of Education and Sport. They even created a custom Linux distribution called LiMux, which is based on Ubuntu 12.04 and uses the KDE4 desktop. It comes with LibreOffice, Firefox and Thunderbird pre-installed. Munich is the only German city I have visited, and that was briefly on a business trip, but I have good memories of drinking in a beer garden. Recently, the city commissioned an external IT assessment, which was carried out by Accenture. The entire LHM, or Landeshauptstadt München, report is 450 pages, and I had a read through it, although mein Deutsch ist nicht sehr gut, so I had to use Google Translate. You may well have heard from various news sites that Munich is considering ditching LiMux and going to Microsoft Windows 10. But why would they? Backhanders from Microsoft? That statement is purely my own opinion. Reading through the LHM report does actually show some quite significant problems that were not necessarily the fault of Linux. Here are the results of interview statements carried out by Accenture. The bulk of dissatisfaction of IT users is caused by the problems of printing, the presentation and editing of documents through unstable programs, cumbersome operation or exchange with external parties. The diverse client architecture and deployment, outdated operating systems, Office and browser versions, as well as the infrastructure are the causes. With each new version of LiMux, errors which had been fixed would reappear again. This was due to inadequate quality testing. Basic corporate services such as printer management, encryption of USB flash drives, and exchange of large files with internal and external parties were inadequate. Now I can appreciate the difficulties with printing in Linux. However, that issue can be mitigated by using a printer manufacturer who has provided proper drivers for Linux. I noticed the problem with general Office type applications is that it's unstable, rather than a complete and utter pain like Microsoft with the ribbon bar. Perhaps there are other factors, and indeed there are. There are staff shortages in the IT department. By the end of 2015, almost a quarter of the LHM's IT vacancies were unoccupied. This corresponds to approximately 15% of existing IT positions. This was not solely due to the lengthy public law employment process, but also to deficits in the process, which are, however, constantly optimised. A frequently mentioned example is, in the case of some requesting units, the long lying times of the so-called cross lists, which are equal to professional statements. Added to this is the fact that partial vacancies are not reported for occupation, presumably meaning part-time or job sharing. In addition, there was no long-term IT support in the personnel recruitment process, e-recruiting. On top of that were issues with staff turnover and age of equipment. Procedures that are operated on outdated infrastructure have led to an increase in longer downtime with corresponding impacts on workability in the units. In some cases, there is a risk that procedures cannot be restored. With the age of software and hardware procedures, the knowledge about operation maintenance and migration of processes is lost through personnel changes. For obsolete technologies, hardware and software products, dependencies arise from individual suppliers and service providers. The budget must be used to address these risks and modernisation. Without a fully established lifecycle management, regular updating of applications and infrastructure elements, this situation will only improve slowly. The infrastructure and architecture concepts developed in the decentralised world hinder the pursuit of strategic objectives of the LHM. Mobile access, optimization in application development and lifecycle management. This is most evident in the diversity of the clients used and the problems users have faced. However, it is also hampering major plans for stabilisation of operations, the modernisation of network infrastructure, and the development of secure mobile access. They are always encountering problems that lead to delays, additional tasks and more effort are required. So the issues are not dependent on a particular variety of operating system, but with IT staff levels, age of equipment, and variety of hardware and software. What sort of volumes of equipment are they talking about? Well, in terms of number of systems on the network, the LHM uses clients based on operating systems Linux, a basic client, and a Microsoft Windows, a standard client. Currently, LHM's IT is about 20,000 Linux basics, 45% at version 5, 32% at version 4.1, and 23% at version 4, and 4,163 Windows clients, 77% at Windows 7, 9% at Windows XP or Vista, and 14% at Windows 2000, which are used when specific applications cannot run under Linux. Hey what? Windows XP and 2000 are end of life. Version 5 of the LiMux client was released in November 2014 and is based on Ubuntu 12.04 LTS and uses the KDE4 desktop. The default Office suite is LibreOffice 4.1, which comes with more than 300 patches. Most of them are included in newer LibreOffice versions. Firefox and Thunderbird are included and come with KDE integration patches. The LiMux client 4.1 from August 2012 is based on Ubuntu 10.04 and KDE Desktop 3.5. It includes OpenOffice, Firefox and Thunderbird. The majority of IT users' dissatisfaction is caused by problems with printing, as well as presentation and editing of documents, unstable programs, cumbersome operation, or exchange with external parties. In a survey carried out in 2015, which asked users about how satisfied they were with the IT, 85% stated they had to deal with software problems, 74% with printing problems, and 54% with hardware problems in their daily work. I sometimes think that people's perception of reality with computing is completely skewed. I remember the results of one of the IT surveys from a company I used to work at. It had a question about how satisfied you were with the boot-up time. This was around 2009 to 2010, so people were moving from XP or Vista to Windows 7. We were still on XP and dealing with a 15-minute boot-up time and about another 5 minutes from login to usable desktop. Most people thought that was reasonably quick. Trying to explain to people that 20 minutes was an horrendously long boot-up time and about 19 minutes and 45 seconds longer than my computer at home took to boot, yet they couldn't comprehend a computer was that fast. Hell, a 1980s DOS computer was a lot quicker than 20 minutes. And when you had finished, you could just turn it off. There was no need to shut down. My point is perception and reality. People are led to believe the utter garbage turned out by Microsoft is the norm. And when presented with something different, the immediate reaction is to dismiss it and even exaggerate any minor faults. Of course, maybe I'm an intolerant Linux fanboy who wants to dismiss everything that Microsoft does. However, I think we are seeing attitudes slowly change towards Microsoft. Competition from Android and Apple is slowly eroding the dominance of Microsoft, and the user interface changes with Windows 8 and the spying tactics of Windows 10 show that Microsoft can do wrong and annoy their users. Perhaps if Munich were looking now to move from Windows 7 to Linux, we might see a more positive uptake from their users. One thing I didn't see in the report was a suggestion to move towards an Apple solution. Do Apple have a corporate solution? Well, I suppose one thing against it is cost. Think that Microsoft licenses are expensive? Well, that pales into insignificance against the hardware cost of Macs and iPhones. But they do mention moving to a Windows 10 solution and deprecating the hardware and software after 5 years. It's strange that they keep the Linux hardware and software going on for longer than 5 years, and then blame its failure as an excuse to move towards Windows 10. Maybe the report had a predetermined bias. When using open source software on the client, it has been shown that, contrary to an expectation from 2006, Linux as the operating system has no relevant market share. Actually, I showed it was at 3%, but yes, it's still low. OpenOffice or LibreOffice is only used by private individuals, universities, schools, or small and medium-sized enterprises. Although both products are available on Linux, Windows, and Mac OS, the market share is low. The situation with Thunderbird email client is similar. In contrast, Firefox has established itself as one of the leading browsers. I think this letter from KDE President Lydia Pincher sums up the situation beautifully. The City of Munich is of course free to decide on their own IT infrastructure. Nonetheless, we believe a move away from free software would be a big mistake and feel compelled to speak up. Specifically, the move away from free software will not actually fix the issues identified in the report by Accenture, remove vendor independence, which was one of the core agreements for moving to free software in the first place, incur an estimated cost of €90 million to be paid by taxpayer money. Another €15 million are expected to be spent on replacing or upgrading hardware that cannot cope with the requirements of Windows 10, but runs fine under Linux. The City of Munich has always been a poster child of free software in public administrations. It is a showcase of what can be done with free software in this setting. The step back by the City of Munich from free software would therefore not just be a blow for this particular deployment, but also have far more reaching effects in other similar deployments. That said, we take this opportunity to invite all other administrations to leverage the work done by the City of Munich over the last years and are willing to help resolve remaining issues in the City of Munich related to our software. In conclusion, varied aging hardware, improperly tested software, and staff shortages within the IT team were the real issue. It will never be solved by migrating to Windows 10. Linux is a free open source product and does not care if you use it. There should never be an argument of why you should use Linux. We are free to choose whatever operating system we put on our computers. If I was a taxpayer living in Munich, I would be angry if the city government wasted millions of euros paying Microsoft licensing fees when the fault lies elsewhere.